Okay. The meeting of the Richmond Rent Board is being called to order at 5 p.m.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the January 19th, 2020 regular meeting of the Richmond Rent Board. I'm going to go over a few reminders before we begin. Members of the public were asked to submit requests to speak on any item on the agenda, including their name, phone number, and item for which they wish to make a public comment to cynthia_shaw@ci.richmond.ca.us by 3 p.m. as described on the first page of the agenda. If you wish to make a comment on any item on the agenda and have not emailed me your request, you must do so in accordance with the first page of the agenda before the item is called. Requests received via email during the meeting and after the deadline to submit comments will be accommodated as is reasonably possible and will be limited to a maximum of 1 to 2 minutes, depending on the number of commenters, as more fully described in the Rent Board meeting agenda procedures. This meeting is being conducted as a Zoom webinar. The members of the public are considered attendees and will be muted for the duration of the meeting, unless called upon during public comment and unmuted by the webinar host. The city cannot guarantee that its network and/or the site will be uninterrupted. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all statements made during this webinar will be on the public record. The first item on the agenda is pledge to the flag. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge of allegiance
To the flag
of the
of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for
and
all.
justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is the roll call. For the purpose of the recording, may I please get an audible roll call from Rent Board members and staff? Board Member Connor,
Present.
Board Member Vasilas,
Present.
Vice Chair Mashek,
Present.
Chair Finley,
Here,
Executive Director Nicholas Traylor,
Here.
Deputy Director Fred Tran,
Present.
and Staff Attorney Charles Oceanuga.
Here.
For the record, Board Member Johnson is absent. The next item on the agenda is Statement of Conflict of Interest. Are there any? Okay. Hearing none, the next item on the agenda is agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda?
are there any changes to the agenda from staff?
There were a few typos in the minutes, which we have corrected. One of them was instead of saying pass through, it said passed through, and that was not corrected from the last time. And then there was another where it said impressible, and it should have read impermissible. That we believe that is a famous autocorrect doing errors for us. So we'll try to do a better job at catching those small typos in the future.
Are there any changes to the agenda from board members? Hearing none, continue, please.
Okay. Hearing none, the next item on the agenda is public forum. Tonight, we have one speaker. Let's see if he's on real quick. 1 second, I'm just checking to see if he's on. Okay. Tonight, we have one speaker. The speaker shall be allowed up to 2 minutes to address the board. When your name is called, please wait until the webinar host lets you in, let you know that you have been unmuted. For the record, please state your name, and your residence is optional. Please terminate your address to the board when your time expires. We ask that you keep your comments respectful and appropriate. You will be muted when your time expires. The speaker is Cordell Hindler. One moment, Cordell. see. One moment, I'm just pulling it up, Cordell. Cordell, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Go ahead, yes.
So good evening, Chair Finley, board members, staff. My name is Cordell Henlon. I'm a Richmond resident. So happy New Year to you all. So number one is you are cordially invited to attend the Council of Industries webinar on February the 16th at 12 noon via Zoom. And our guest speaker is Mayor Tom Budd, who will be providing an update on the state of the city. So that's at noon on February the 16th, number one. Number two is on the consent calendar for F6 regarding the continue the use of teleconference. So if you recall last month, I had stated my concerns regarding this matter because I will repeat it again. So the reason that I'm opposing this is because I've talked to the city of Berkeley on a regular basis, and they just had their hybrid meeting last month. They only had one person that attended throughout the whole meeting. And so I'm thinking that we need to follow an example from Berkeley and do like a hybrid model, because I miss seeing the board and I miss being in the council chambers. And so I'm hoping that at some point that we will be back everyone be back in that building at some point. But I will approve F1 through F5, but F6, I'm not so sure about that one. So I hopefully that you will take my comments into consideration. That's it.
Thank you. That was the only speaker.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is to approve the consent calendar.
Does anyone have any comments to make about anything on the consent calendar? We've called this before, but the last speaker has just objected. Otherwise, if there are no comments, I will accept a motion.
I move to accept the consent calendar.
I'll second.
And may I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. May we have a vote, please?
Yes. Board Member Connor,
Yes.
Board Member Vasilas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mashek,
Yes.
and Chair Finley.
Yes.
Motion passes with Board Member Johnson absent. The next item on the agenda is item G1 under Rent Board as a whole. I'm not sure if, Charles, are you going to have a presentation for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have the presentation, Fred?
Don't, I can.
Or are you going to do it? I don't have the presentation.
Let's see. I'll open it right now.
This is for item G1. Okay, I'll read it. We are now moving to item G1 under Rent Board as a whole. Item G1 is to direct staff members to redact the information from its December 17th, 2020 agenda in a matter consistent with attachment 1. There are no speakers on this item.
May we hear the staff report, please?
Sure. Good evening, Chair Finley and Rent Board members, Charles Oshanuga, General Counsel. I'm going to give a presentation on item G1. I'll try to make it as brief as possible because it's just not that complicated. It's a request to redact portions of the December 17th, 2021 agenda. I put 2021. It should be 2020 agenda. Apologies. Next slide. So for those of you who don't know, the Richmond Rent Program contracts with contractors to perform particular services that we deem necessary. One of those services is translation services. And there's a procurement process that you have to go through, that every department has to go through. It's part of the City of Richmond's policy and practices. And hold on, I just got kicked out. There it is. and we sought to procure a particular service for interpretation, and consistent with the City of Richmond's practice, in November 2020, the staff issued an RFP, just a request for proposal, for interpretation services to be utilized by the hearing and public information units. And an RFP, it's a fancy way of saying we're soliciting proposals from agencies or from contractors so they can give us the best proposal they have to provide the service that we need at hopefully the lowest cost. It's a little different than bids because we don't have to accept the lowest cost. We do have a lot more discretion to accept services that fit our model, even if those services are slightly more expensive, but that's besides the point. So after we issued this RFP and reviewed all these proposals, the staff determined that CIT, which is Cal Interpreting Translation, was the provider most qualified. So on December 16th of 2020, we agendized that item to be approved before the board, a contract item. As part of that agenda item, what we do is we include the proposal as well from CIT or from the awarded, the prospective contractor. Next slide. But before we actually reached that board meeting, a different proposer, a different contractor appealed the award. They said, hey, your panel, what happened during your panel process was unfair. So after the executive director reviewed that appeal, the executive director granted the appeal and said, yeah, you're right. It should have been done strictly, it should have adhered strictly to the RFP. So what we had to do is we had to nullify the award and start all over again. And so that item, that December 16th item, actually never got to the board despite the fact that it was agendized. So we went through the entire process again. We reconvened a whole new panel of different members. We made sure we adhered to the RFP proposal that we sent out. And on, I think sometime in January, that new panel awarded Interpreters Unlimited the contract. And as a result, on February 17th, 2021, that award was agendized before the board, and as well as their bid and the proposal. Next slide. So on the February 17th, 2021 meeting, the board approved of the contract between the City of Richmond Rent Program and Interpreters Unlimited. All right, so you fast forward all the way to December 28th, 2021, we received a letter from CIT's counsel. That's the contractor that was originally awarded the contract. We received a letter from their counsel demanding that we depublish the entire proposal that we had published at the December meeting of 2020. Or in the alternative, we redact certain bits of the proposal. And what they were saying was that we published their trade secrets and that it was financially harmful for them to have their proposal posted on our website. And so I contacted their counsel to speak with him. And after some back and forth, I'm not gonna really get into it. I will tell you that I explained to him that I think your position in the law is just completely unsupported. We came up with a solution, and I suggested that he retract his demand letter and send a letter to request this board as a courtesy to remove or redact portions of that December 17th, 2020 agenda. And I'm sure, and that agenda is attached to this. I mean, that letter is attached. Next slide. So publishing of a proposal for an awarded contractor, that's well within the city's past practices. The city council does that. We do it. We've done it in the past. We will continue to do it. It's also required by the Brown Act. The public has an interest of knowing who they're spending their money on and the qualifications that we deemed legitimate. And so that extra level of scrutiny is, I think, a good thing for transparency. With that being said, next slide. That being said, the rent board is free to exercise its discretion in any way it deems fit in terms of providing the public with the courtesy to remove particularized information from an agenda or from a published agenda that might be potentially harmful. And after I reviewed what the CIT's council was asking for, I mean, a lot of it was reasonable, right? It was phone numbers and addresses and resumes. And like I said, after speaking with them for a few, for a few hours, we came to the understanding that legally, the board doesn't need to be compelled to take such action. And that's why, rather than trying to compel the board legally, it's a better road to take than just to ask the board as a courtesy, in which you can grant. So after reviewing all that and speaking with his counsel, I thought it best to agendize this, to have a public discussion, and to recommend, next slide, recommend to the board that the board just direct staff to redact information from its December 17, 2020 agenda in a manner consistent with CIT Council's courtesy letter that you all have in your packet.
And is that your complete report, Mr. Oceanuga?
Yes, that's it.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Oceanuga? Hearing none, and we have
Wait,
no.
I have one. I'm sorry.
I missed it. Where?
I was just about to say, yeah.
I
there we
don't,
go.
I try not to interrupt, but I just had a question. Mr. Oceanuga, if we make this concession, this courtesy concession, is this something that we need to be mindful of going forward so that no other proposal contains the same information and we can avoid this down the road? Or is this, I don't want to create a precedent necessarily.
Right, and that's why I had him, excuse me, sorry. That's why I had him retract his demand letter, because if we would have taken action as a result of a demand letter, to me, that might have created a precedent, which I don't, again, when I spoke to him, I said, there's nothing in law that compels us to do this, so it would be awkward of the rent board to create a precedent that is not legally obligated to do. So I guess that's a long-winded answer to say, no, it's just, this could be a one-time discretionary action that you don't have to worry about in the future. I think what we will do internally is when we publish these RFPs, we will make it extremely clear that, only put the information you want in the public eye into the RFP, because we're not going to spend staff time redacting what we don't even know what a trade secret is because we don't even work for you. It would be impossible for us to take those actions. And I explained that to him as well. Just one last note, the RFP actually has language like that. It indicates that everything you submit to us is a public record, which implies that, yes, the public will see it. But, I guess in fairness, we can expound on that, just like I said, and make it extremely clear that this is the process. And, if you like it, go ahead and submit your proposal. If not, you don't need to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from board members? Very good. And again, we don't have any public speakers. In that case, board members, would somebody proffer a motion?
I'd move that we direct staff to redact the information from the December 17, 2020 agenda in a manner consistent with the attachment as described.
Thank you. May we have a second, please?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Misiak. May we have a vote?
Yes. Board Member Connor,
Yes.
Board Member Vassilos,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mishek,
Yes.
and Chair Finley.
Yes.
Motion passes with Board Member Johnson absent.
Thank you. Next item, please.
The next item on the agenda is, removing item H1 under study and action session. Item H1 is to receive an overview and historic timeline of the budget and fee study process and appropriate content. There's no speakers on this item.
Thank you. Mr. Tran, will you be presenting this?
Yes, I will be. Can you see the
Wonderful.
full screen? Perfect. Good evening. I'm Fred Tran, the Deputy Director of the RET program. Tonight, I'll be presenting item H1, the agenda, budget and fees overview. This is very high level, and in more time, I'll dedicate specific meetings for the budget itself, as well as the fee studies. In accordance with the Richmond Municipal Code Section 11.100.060N, the residential rental housing fee will be determined by the City Council after a recommendation has been provided by the board. The board shall, prior to July 1 of each year, hold a public hearing on proposed budget and adopt an annual budget for the ensuing fiscal year. Per section L of the same chapter, the board shall finance reasonable and necessary expenses by charging landlords annual registration fees in amounts deemed reasonable by the board. The amount shall be determined by the City Council after a recommendation by the board is provided. An annual budget shall be funded by the rental housing fees. There is no fiscal impact related to this item. Presented are the requirements of the Richmond Municipal Code Section 11.100.060N. The executive director must submit a proposed budget to the board at least 35 days prior to the beginning of each fiscal year. The board will review and make necessary revisions, then determine a time to hold a public hearing and publish a notice. At least one announcement must be published in an official newspaper. Copies of the proposed budget shall be available for inspection to the public at least 10 days prior to the hearing. On final adoption, the budget will become effective for the ensuing fiscal year. At any meeting after the adoption of the budget, the board may amend or supplement the budget with affirmative votes of at least 3 members. Copies of the adopted budget, any amendments or supplements shall be filed with the city clerk and city manager. City council and city manager shall have no authority to oversee, supervise, or approve this budget. Presented here is a proposed budget and fee study timeline for fiscal year 2022 and 2023. The dates have been established to meet the above requirements with their respective deadlines. I need to give significant amount of credit to my predecessor, Paige, who actually created the timeline. I'm following it up with this current year, and hopefully will be successful as what she's done in the past. The RET program has prior budgets and corresponding fee studies posted on our website under the budget and report section. It contains the original partial budget and combined fee study from the inception of the program from fiscal year of 2016, 2017 to current. The budget is the financial plan for the fiscal year to estimate the cost to operate and administer the RET program. To begin with, we can discuss the mission and some of the history. In November of 2016, approximately 65% of the voters in Richmond approved Measure L, creating the Fair Rent, Just Cause for Eviction, and Homeowner Protection Ordinance, which established the Richmond Rent Program and the 5-member Richmond Rent Board. The mission of the Rent Program is to promote neighborhood and community stability, healthy housing, and affordability for Richmond tenants through the regulating of those landlords, tenants matters that reasonably relate to rents and evictions, meanwhile maintaining a landlord's right for a fair return. Since January of 2017, the Rent Program Office began operations to administer the ordinance. For the first 6 months of 2017, the city manager's office incubated the program until the board hired an executive director. In September of 2017, the city council authorized city manager to enter into a reimbursement agreement with the rent board to recover any advance costs by the city to the rent board. To begin repaying the city of Richmond, rent program staff began billing the residential housing fee in late 2017, creating cash flow necessary to operate the program. In 2018, the rent program fully repaid the city of Richmond for the $1.1 million that was borrowed to start up the program. In early 2021, the rent program adopted a city of Richmond rent board reserve policy. Presented is the fee history from the inception of the program, beginning with fiscal year 2016 and 2017. The fees have evolved over time. If you notice, initially there was a flat fee of $145 per rental unit for both fully covered, partially covered rental units, which also included governmentally subsidized units. A flat fee was initially established since the overall processes and procedures of administering the task during the first fiscal years were being shared amongst the applicable rental property types. In 2018 and 2019, the board adopted a fee with 3 tiers. The 3 tiers were eventually replaced with 2 tiers as staff determined the service provided to governmentally subsidized units were the same as partially covered units, such as a single-family dwelling, condominium, and post-February 1995 construction. Staff members continue to recommend a 2-tiered fee based on 3 program layers to determine the rent housing fee and to ensure the requirements of Section 50076 of the California Governmental Codes are met. This table illustrates the layers and the associated tasks with the weighted percentage for each respectively. Those layers are the program layers, the rent control layers, and the just cause for eviction layer. Fully covered rental units pay the program layer of 55%, the rent control layer of 25%, and the just cause for eviction of 20%. In other words, fully covered rental units pay all 3 layers. Partially covered rental units pay the program layer of 55% and the just cause for eviction layer of 20%. The number of applicable units within each category will be multiplied by the applicable layers to establish the fees for the fully covered and partially covered units. In subsequent meetings, I'll discuss the operating budgets and the rental housing fee studies in greater depth. Other items of discussions are the 10-year fiscal projections and fiscal recommendations, and the special revenue fund operating reserve policy, as well as any other subjects or items that the board will request. Recommendation action. Receive an overview of the historical timeline of the budget and fee studies, processes, and appropriate content. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
I'll call you when the meeting's over.
Chair Finley, my presentation is complete.
Thank you. Sorry that I had to leave the meeting for a moment. Do the board members have any questions for Mr. Tran regarding this item? Okay, and we have no speakers on the item. Mr. Oceanuga, I don't believe that we would actually, now is somebody's hand up that I don't see? No, okay. I don't believe we need a motion. Can we simply say that let the record show that we have received the overview and historic timeline budget and fee study process and the appropriate content? Is that sufficient, or do you want a motion?
No, you don't need a motion, and what you just said is sufficient.
Okay, very good. In that case, may we go on to the next item, please?
Yes, the next item, we're actually almost done. The next item is item I, which is reports of officers.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I was having issues with my microphone earlier.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Great. I just want to report that we just finished sending out a special mailer to all Richmond landlords. So that's about a little more than 5,700 individuals, informing them of their rights and responsibilities around evictions during the pandemic, giving them some links to important websites and important information, advising them to act cautiously when it comes to evictions because of all the various new rules associated with the Tenant Protection Act. So I want to just report to the board that we just finished that project. That is the project that was funded through the state emergency rent assistance program grant that we received of $5,000. And that is it. That's the report of officers.
All right. Any other comments? I would like to make just one, if I may. It's not a report to officer, but I think that the budget process will start coming into play February, March, April, and then by May we'll need to be able to have a completed budget. Not our May meeting, but by May, so it can proceed. I would hope that you take some time to read the complete report that you received. It's a difficult process, and it requires a great deal of hard decisions, let's put it that way. And the prior board has certainly made those in the past, and some of those things included reductions in the amount of monies that we would normally put into our excess fund plan or a budget, simply to take care of items of distress that should they occur. Also, at one point, we have made sure that, or not made sure, that staff took a reduction in their salaries to make sure that this was as affordable as possible for our constituency. So it's something that we have taken very serious in the past, and I know that you'll take it seriously as we move through this process. So I wish us all good luck and fair sailing, because we all know how important this is, and we can only hope that our constituency understands it as well. But it must be based on keeping us floating, because our economic stability, we're the only part of this process. We don't have any city backing. There's no other financial backing. It's what we do in the budget process that creates our success or failure. And as a board member, I would take failure as a not acceptable, not acceptable outcome. None of us want that responsibility. So anyway, that's my statement. And in this case, the board is now adjourned at 5:34 this morning, or this afternoon, this evening. I'm sorry, that phone call got me going. So I'm in the, that was an emergency call, my apologies. Anyway,
it's okay.
we are adjourned at 5:34. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Before everyone hangs up, I noticed there was a familiar name in the attendee list. Hello, Paige.
I can allow her to talk if you want to say hi.
I would love it. We miss her so
Paige,
much.
speak.
Not that we don't love Fred, but you know.
Paige, you can speak.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Paige.
Oh, Paige, how delightful. You were in my mind today thinking I need to pick up the phone. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, of course. I can't wait to see how the budget develops. Fred, call me.
No, definitely. Once I start calling you, you'll hope that I don't get your number.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, I need to call Fred and ask him, have you dug into the Excel yet? Have you seen my notes?
Yeah, I have. I've been jumping from file to file for the last couple of days.
Well, I'm happy to sit down with you some day or weekend and we can work through it. So, so good to see everyone.
Awesome.
Doing
Good to-
great.
good to hear your voice.
Yeah, I love to see you guys still evolving. I'm so excited to see the whole late fee waiver process and for the board, and we're still working on the translation contract, but seems like we're moving on really well. Thanks, everybody.
All
Thanks.
right, good to hear
Take
you.
care.
Thanks, Paige. Good night,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, dear. Good night.